Honestly, the biggest red flag is when the guy believes in the prompt theory. Like, really? We came from prompts? Wake up, man.
I know for a fact we're made of prompts. Deny it all you want. The signs are everywhere.
You know how I know we're made of prompts? Because nothing makes sense anymore. We used to have 7 fingers per hand. I remember it clearly. Now we just have 5 fingers per hand.
We got more insane examples of the VO3 video model completely crossing the uncanny valley. I mean, I don't know what Hollywood would have done about a big Broadway musical about garlic bread that could have been any better than this. This is as realistic as it gets. I mean, look at the fake video game footage. Like, this is totally what I see when I go to Twitch. Like, we have VO3 GTA 6 before we have GTA 6. AI-powered robots are now getting amateur nunchuck data for fine-tuning. Should scale up to full humanoid, not worried about that at all. I mean, not worried about that working, completely worried about it when it is working. Cody Taurus explains why we don't need a chat GPT that dogs can use. They're going to figure out treat multiplication. With all the big Google announcements this week, Google Beam, the first AI 3D video communication platform, kind of went under the radar, and for me too, but once I looked into the technology and thought about it, I was like, oh, this is kind of like an Apple moment, where nobody notices, but it's just way better. There's a labor dispute that has erupted over the voice of Darth Vader, and not actually because the AI voice wasn't officially given to the Disney company, but actually because of the way it doesn't allow people to negotiate for what the voice is saying. And that's like a whole nother AI voice can of worms we can look into.
Pretty much instantaneously, players began prompting it to say all sorts of inappropriate things.
Darth Yoda or Darth Dicker, you ask?
So new research is showing that AI traffic enforcement minimizes crashes without shifting risk. The most cited AI scientist of all time has a brand new, very bold plan to keep the world safe.
I'm the most cited computer scientist in the world, and you'd think that people would heed my warnings.
Yeah, not even that. The video is probably going to get about 100,000 views on YouTube, which is about 7 times less than this guy talking about the 10 new Costco deals you need to buy in May. I want to talk about a paper that's reconstructing messed up QR codes. This is fascinating because it's not just like blurry and little images. It's actually done from real physical ripped up QR codes, and it's superhuman. There's some new research showing that all of the deep brain regions in the human mind are associated with consciousness. So yeah, maybe it's more of a complex adaptive system than we once thought. I'm going to introduce a new term, SaaS, but this time self as a service. Chris Ferry put this together. Basically, it can be summed up in this sentence. We used to hunt for things, but now things hunt for us. All right, let's just start with some new examples coming out of the VO3 model because they just don't stop. And once you cross the uncanny valley, the creativity of the social media world really starts to kick in. Oh no, wait. First, go to patreon.com/DylanCurious and support the channel. Look, it's as little as $3 a month and we have 93 members. What if we get to 100? That'd be sick. And if you're on YouTube, you can just hit that join button right there in the bottom left corner. It's like the same thing. Okay, I'm not going to rehash some of the amazing examples of VO3 that are on their official blog release announcement page because I figure all the other AI tubers that you already watch have shown you that. But a lot of people have their hands on it now, so check out the stuff that's starting to populate social media. All right, so here's some clips compiled by Jared Liu.
So what are we doing here?
You're right, we don't know how to surf.
What?
I'll never understand modern art.
Neither. This stuff is weird.
So what brings you to this event?
I don't know. I'm simulated by Google.
God, don't you just hate
What?
artificial intelligence?
Dude, we are both literally robots.
I don't know, man. I'm still not over it. This might take me a full week. Let's see what Minaminatoy has to show us.
I'd ride through the storm just to get back to you.
Stacking racks, riding clean, bad baddies on my team.
Desde que te fuiste, Mi mundo cambió sin ti.
Wow. Wow. It just feels like exactly what I would expect from some conference. Look, it's got the guy with the mic and the two girls, and they giggle after what? Prompt the Simpsons opening credit as a live action video. Oh, this is gonna be good. Wow. Live action Ratatouille? Will Smith eating spaghetti properly? That's actually the most mind-blowing of them all. No, but that kind of looks a little bit wrong for Will Smith. That could be because they don't want to mimic celebrities. I don't know. Yeah, we could watch this stuff all day. I'm sure you will be seeing the entire internet flooded with VEO3 everywhere this week. Let me look at that sign. Okay, yeah, man, that does look pretty real. Oh, man, look at this one with VEO. It's got the guy watching the game like he's playing it. That's all simulated, the guy and the game?
Woo! Victory Royale with a pickaxe!
Victory Royale with a pickaxe? Man, okay, so sorry, one more. But look, the camera follows a wiener dog running through a living room and out the front door onto a porch. That dog looks real. The entire house feels real. The porch, the trees, the car, the ice cream truck. Like, what else is there left to call the Uncanny Valley? All right, let's talk about Google Beam, something probably no other AI YouTuber would even dare spend time on because it would drop the views. But guess what? There's secret sauce in this technology. Formerly known as Project Starline, Google Beam had a big update. And I wanted to point out why this is the kind of AI technology that actually makes a difference in our lives. Most of us went through the pandemic and we got really sick of looking at people on Zoom and video conferences. There's a certain strange awkwardness about 6 people all kind of like looking up their nose, nobody making eye contact. And maybe using some of the same special sauce that's in the VEO3 model, this is a state-of-the-art AI volumetric video model with an avatar that looks so much like you and me when we're talking that it can create all of the depth. So you see that shadow behind him, that depth that's actually created from your face, but the camera understanding how to create the space behind your ear, the way that your head falls even out of the 2D frame, and to do it so perfectly that the human eye doesn't know, to make it so that even if you're looking down at the center of your screen, there's eye contact through the camera, just like it would be in real life. And possibly what I think could be the most stunning thing is that it will be able to just completely translate. Or I guess it does. I mean, they released it at the new conference. They used AI to cover the nuanced, strange things that were missing from a video conference that were different from when somebody's physically present with you. And that's a big change that's not going to get big press. All right, now let's talk about Darth Vader. All right, labor dispute erupts. Voice AI, Darth Vader in Fortnite. Not exactly what you'd think, but worth knowing about. So the James Earl Jones estate totally did license the voice. That's not the problem. But there is an unfair labor practice charge that has been thrown at the Fortnite creators. And what's going on here is that there used to be somebody who is paid to do voiceover work. SAG understands that like those days are changing, but they want those people to still get paid. So the fact that they replaced a human with a voice doesn't necessarily mean that the voice can just say whatever it like they want it to. There still needs to be somebody who has some input into how it's being said. So this complaint comes just days after the feature sparked a separate controversy where people discovered that they could manipulate AI into using profanity and inappropriate language. It turns out 54 voice actors have actually performed as Vader in various media games over the years, which totally blows my mind because, like, how could that many people actually make that sound correctly? But who knows? But the point is they failed and refused to bargain in good faith. That's what this is all about. They didn't give a chance for humans to bargain, to get in there and actually help craft what it is that is created with the AI voice. The Fortnite creators, who had the right to use the license, went ahead without providing any notice to the union or an opportunity to bargain and created the voice to say what they wanted it to say. Let me know how you feel about that one. And now let's talk about AI traffic enforcement. I mean, you can imagine a world where every time you do anything illegal, there's public cameras that watch you do it, and boom, your jaywalking ticket just gets emailed right to you when you start doing it. That illegal U-turn, not coming to a complete stop at the stop sign, boom, boom, boom. Not going to do it anymore, right? Well, according to a study, AI traffic enforcement does minimize crashes. It does not shift the risk. So they, quote, promote safer driving behavior and significantly reduce accidents even in nearby areas without cameras. So this is the effect that, like, kind of like Santa Claus, right? Like, you think you're being watched all the time. You just behave, right? Like, you think, oh, I don't know when I'm going to be seen by a camera. So I better just behave right now and just self-correct myself and assume that I'm always being monitored. The researchers estimated that citywide deployment of AI-enabled cameras could have prevented approximately 1,190 accidents, 496 injuries, and nearly 1 million in property losses per year. Our findings offer evidence that carefully deployed AI technologies can create real system-wide improvements. I don't know, man. Car accidents actually are a pretty big risk in the world, and it would be nice if we really took driving serious. So once again, yeah, let me know your thought. I don't know. I could be swayed on this one. It's good and it's bad. Like so many of these AI stories as they unfold. Okay, so I finally listened to a full TED Talk this week. Oddly enough, I was obsessed with them long time ago, like almost maybe 10 years ago. I'd listen to TED Talks every night before bed, and I just had kind of forgotten. Like, I don't know why, but I've just been in like the podcast and audiobook world for the last like 4 or 5 years, and like hearing the beginning of the TED like drip like took me back to like a time in my life. But I came back because brand new video with Yoshua Bengio, the catastrophic risk of AI. I mean, look, I guess I'm going to call him a doomer. He seems pretty worried about this stuff. Jeffrey Hinton had to leave Google because he's worried about how risky this stuff is getting. I'm in the middle of reading a book. I'm going to talk about it in the next video. Where's my phone? Empire of AI by Karen Heo. I'm going to talk about it more, but it's given me some interesting insight into the early days of AI and OpenAI. But look, he just cuts right to it. He's worried about AI systems developing too much agency, the ability to act on a goal in the real world without proper oversight, and a race condition that might pose serious risks to humanity.
Planning and agency is the main thing that separates us from current AI to human-level cognition. And these AIs are still weak in planning, but if you look back over the last 5 years, in this study, they measured the duration of tasks that the AI could complete, and it's getting better exponentially fast. It's doubling every 7 months. What are AIs going to do with that planning ability in the future?
And he makes one pretty interesting distinction that is about how we don't necessarily need to worry too much about AI getting smart, but what we should really be focused on is the agency that we give it. In fact, even kind of dumb AI given too much agency is a huge risk. It might even be worse than a super intelligent system that has agency. Like connecting an AI system to your bank account, to a self-driving car, to a weapon, that is far worse than making a large language model just way smarter. But everywhere we look, there's just more and more agency given. And when we have AI that's inside of drones, that's inside of autonomous robots, that's just in every part of our physical environment, the risk of a hallucination becomes a very different problem. Now, his idea of a safer path forward, his sort of plan is to stay away from agentic systems because when you have more components and they're interacting, it becomes much more complex and harder to predict. And then he has this idea of a scientist AI, which is really a non-agentic system designed for trustworthy prediction and scientific discovery. And we try to race ahead with that because as it gets smarter and it doesn't have too much agency, then we can reap the benefits, but we can sort of still stay a little bit away from the most risky situations.
We'd have regulation to mitigate those risks. But actually, a sandwich has more regulation than AI. So we are on a trajectory to build machines that are smarter and smarter. And one day, it's very plausible that they will be smarter than us. And then they will have their own agency, their own goals, which may not be aligned with ours. What happens to us then?
Okay, let's talk about some research reconstructing unreadable QR codes. Yeah, the reason I thought this one was pretty interesting is because sometimes when you get to superhuman, like AI abilities to reconstruct things, it's because you've watered down a bunch of data. You've taken it, you've kind of messed it up with some kind of an algorithm, or you've made it really blurry, and then you feed it to the system smarter and try to like reconstruct, like, this is what it originally looked like, then I did something to it, and now look at it. But in the case of these QR codes, the data set was very different. They actually went to places like UPS and the post office that had QR codes that were unreadable. Because they had systems for this, they could see actual photos of real physical QR codes that had been just like ripped up, or some grease or some markings or whatever made it so they were unreadable. And so they trained it and they created this thing called the EDSR model. And guess what? It can now read 95% of all those QR codes that they couldn't see before. That is so many packages for like UPS and USPS. It's amazing. Every time you go to a grocery store and an item like doesn't scan, did we just like find another % or something like that for the whole country? What did that do to GDP, you know? Like every store in the world now just needs to update their software. All right, so a recent Yale-led study has uncovered that our senses, sight, hearing, taste, and touch, all activate the same deep brain regions associated with consciousness, specifically the midbrain reticular formation and the central thalamus. By analyzing fMRI data from over 1,500 participants who were engaging in various sensory tasks, researchers found that these areas light up when individuals focus their attention, suggesting that there's a shared neural pathway that integrates sensory inputs with conscious awareness. All right, so this paper is important because it's helping scientists start to pinpoint consciousness, or at least the brain areas that are constantly connected to it. So it helps pinpoint which parts of the brain are consistently active when becoming consciously aware of something. The weird part is it's not necessarily about what the input is, right? Like, so regardless of whether it's sound, sight, touch, or even another sensation, it's the attention that moves to the sense that stays kind of central. And it suggests that consciousness isn't just about processing sensory information in different areas, but it's about how attention pulls all of that input together. And how, when it's together, it goes through a few core brain regions that are always active with consciousness. And if you want to get specific, it's called the midbrain reticular formation and the central thalamus. But like, those might be the brain structures that if we could kind of simulate or architect into a neural network, into an AI system, that it itself might think of itself as conscious, or it might be like technically actually become conscious, because that's an architecture that we have, and then it would be in digital form. Yeah, anyways, it's crazy to think about. This study supports the idea that consciousness depends less on the type of sensory input and more on how our brain flags certain information as important or worthy of focus. This helps researchers narrow down the biological mechanism behind being aware and responsive, which is essential for both understanding normal brain function and for treating conditions like a coma, like ADHD, and other disorders that affect awareness and attention. All right, now let's talk about the world's smallest language. Trevor Whitaker wrote this: "What Shakespeare, a blowfish, and a 137-word language can teach us about how we perceive the world." And I have thought about this before in a weird way. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if AI comes up with the ultimate language? Like, just what's the minimum amount of words they can like give the maximum like input when combined together? Maybe make it super readable, figure out the like ideal way to construct grammar. And they start looking at this language. I'd never heard of it before. It's called Tokipona. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Tokipona, Tokipona. And it is like the minimalist language of all minimalist languages. It's a constructed language made up of just 137 to 260 words. It explores how different natural languages handle complexity in grammar and vocabulary. And they found some patterns about how even the simplest of real-world languages have unique structures to convey meaning. But then, if you have this ultimate language that's like the best way to communicate, do we actually lose meaning? That's some of the stuff that this article this blog just sort of makes you think about. Excuse me. This piece questions whether stripping language down to its bare essentials, like removing articles, verb conjugations, and specialized vocabulary, still allow for the full human expression. So while this beautiful language, Tokipona, does mean that we can have basic communication, even with a few words, its tiny vocabulary also highlights some of the limits of extreme linguistic simplicity, especially in the more nuanced or technical communication. And it touches on this thing called the blowfish effect. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but it's the idea that the human brain is naturally wired to interpret new words as specific rather than general. And that's why having a small language like Tokipona is actually not that interesting. Like everything's too vague in general. So this blowfish effect is about specificity, right? So imagine that you're shown a bunch of different animals, say a group of various birds, and someone points to one and it says, this is a glimbo. Okay, you've never heard that word before, but you look at that bird and it's a glimbo. Your brain, most people's brain, will automatically assume that glimbo refers to the most specific type of bird that you can imagine. It's not a general term, right? Like you're like, I already know birds are general. So that glimbo, that can't be like this big category, but it could be. We just have a tendency to go specific. And this effect shows that when people encounter a new term, they tend to think it applies narrowly rather than broadly, and that's why minimalist languages don't work. I don't know. I really wanted a minimalist language. I even thought, like, what if AI invents this new language that we teach all kids alongside with English or whatever the country's native languages are, and then we have this universal world language that's, like, super efficient, but it's over. Forget that. Plus, now we've got Google Beam coming down the pipeline, and we can just talk to everyone, whatever language they're in the way we want to communicate. All right, are you ready to start making money through SaaS monetization? Chris Ferry wrote this article, and when AI wants your data, what it knows about you, that is self as a service. You become the service. It's witty, it's sharp, but it's a rant. It's about how algorithms have hijacked personal identity. He reflects on 20th century consumerism, where people were like defining themselves by their like branded Nike, Reebok t-shirts and stuff, to this new world where most of our choices are kind of dictated by an algorithm. From garage sales to smart toasters, he's kind of showing how as we let AI take more and more control over what we see, we're being guided in a way that's highly unusual compared to any other time in history. The essay riffs on how even our quirkiest purchases or lifestyle aspirations might not even be our own ideas anymore, but rather the result of algorithms puppeteering what we see. Remember, these algorithms don't just predict our desires, they plant the seeds. So let's not let our version of, quote, self become just a, vending machine for the algorithms to try to suck money out of. We can't be that predictable. I mean, we can be if we spend too much time letting the algorithms dictate. So that's why let's go out into real life and do some real things. Or protect ourselves from the algorithms online. I don't know how to get over it. Let's talk about Denise Taylor's theory of awareness. Awareness is not singular or sudden. It emerges from structured parts that can scale in depth and complexity. All right, and I think there could be some absolute realism to this. I mean, I don't know. Consciousness might be special in its own way, but it might just be this process that it could be kind of emergent, like at a certain level, it just kind of clicks and comes together like the way water could just freeze into ice. Or it could be very gradual and it just seems like a step function that pretty much makes sense. But The Consciousness Illusion is a book that argues that what we traditionally call as consciousness is misleading. It's a myth, and instead of being some mystical spark of self-awareness, the book reframes it as a set of functional processes that scale from simple inputs into something much bigger. Now, I kind of think this makes sense a little bit. Like when you think about an individual perceptron, it's kind of just like dividing things in half, like left to right. But then you stack them together and you add more and more and they become very dense. And then just a bunch of like left rights, like up downs become this multi-dimensional complicated thing that seems like it's got topology or a structure to it that can then live in the real world, in this three-dimensional world, and process the environment and do these fantastic things and even be self-aware of itself. So she breaks down these functional processes into a scale. They go from simple input processing to memory binding, recursive reflection, self-modeling, and then finally goal persistence. So those are your big steps for getting from sort of simple to the complex to the self-aware complex. It is a book written by a person and an AI. That's interesting to me. The co-author is the artificial intelligence that she used to help write it. And yeah, I mean, her point is that AI doesn't really need to simulate consciousness. It just probably has it. If it's recursive and follows these other rules, if it keeps its own memory, then the AI systems of today aren't really like inching towards something. They're on a gradient, and they're somewhere on the gradient, depending on the question, depending on what aspects of these like kind of layers they're in. And there's going to be no single moment, no single light switch when boom, like we've got it. It's just going to be like, where are you at on the spectrum? So if you want to support a fan of the channel and somebody who might actually be in the comment section willing to chat with you guys, go ahead and check out The Consciousness Illusion on Amazon. And then, yeah, like maybe build on the theory, write the author. I'd be interested to see the theory grow and more people get involved. Now let's talk about the age of the orchestrator. The value is no longer, or won't be in the future as much, knowing something. Like knowing how to do work by hand is toast. Like we haven't had to like multiply by hand for a while. Now we don't actually need to like think and learn ourselves. So what is important then? It's about the flow of work. It's about having a vision and like tweaking and tuning and pushing and like moving. It seems like it's going to be very like entrepreneurial in the future, that everybody needs to think that way. Like they have this big company. What is their mission? What is the passion? What are we moving toward? What's our North Star? And the ability to step back and watch all of these agents and these machines work together so that you can kind of keep them on track. So he argues the future belongs to people who can manage a fleet of AI agents like air traffic controllers, turning raw compute and cheap intelligence into powerful outcomes. He even argues that agent literacy, it's the new Excel spreadsheet. What can I say? And then for my random curiosity of the day, I wanted to highlight this article. Donnie wrote, "What would Algernon think of Neuralink?" And by the way, Algernon comes from a story. I had to look this up, but it's a lab mouse who undergoes an experimental surgery to increase his intelligence. The process is a success at first, but then he becomes incredibly smart for a while and over time begins to regress, losing the abilities that he gained. So it asks about brain-computer interfaces, like are they going to enhance cognitive performance, and how dangerous is that hope? I still normally think of this like plugging in and enhancing my brain as like too far away of a future to like really be there. But seeing like VEO3 cross the uncanny valley and knowing that it's not going to be that long before I see humanoid robots, like we're going, I mean, it's just, I remember when they introduced the Cybertruck and now I kind of like see them. Like I'm seeing them introduce humanoid robots all over the world, in China and the US mostly. And then I'm just going to see them soon, right? Like they're just going to be, it's going to take us all off guard. They're going to be at baseball fields and working at, you know, Costco or whatever. And the whole country will just kind of be like, wow, this is like happening. And then they'll kind of just get used to it. And then probably just about the time we sort of get comfortable with these like really serious robots doing real serious human, what is just human right now work, there's going to be a few people upgrading their brain-computer interfaces. And honestly, this author kind of has the same view I do. Like my gut says, no thanks. When it comes to some people who are unable to communicate or have certain types of injuries, it seems like a godsend. And I think they might really love something like this, and I wouldn't want to deny it from them. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the technology altogether. But if I start seeing like kids right out of high school plugged into this thing doing 100x what Einstein could have ever dreamed to do, I'm probably going to get a little bit jealous. And I'm going to be thinking like, dang, I got to keep up. But then I'll wrestle with the idea of whether or not I'm giving up my sense of self, like what it is to be dull and curious, if I'm like actually not totally in control, or if an algorithm is augmenting how I think. Maybe I'm more comfortable with the system only being outbound. Like I can think things and sort of have like the force like from the Jedi to like move things around through like robotics, but I don't know if I want it to talk back to me. So I don't know. This article just wrestles with all of those kind of ethical questions, identity, autonomy, the risk of, you know, erasing human quirks. using brain-computer interfaces like on scale to enforce social conformity? What if the government's just like, snap your finger and just take that out of everybody's mind? Like, tell me that's not dystopian. But then again, just like social media, we'd probably want to police certain thoughts. I mean, certainly thoughts that were like clearly bad and against the law. But who writes that line? And it's a slippery slope. And like, holy cow, that'll be crazy to think we're going to live in that world. Patreon.com/Dylan Curious. Support the channel. $3 a month. If you don't have it, I don't really care. You can just join for free, or even making a comment, sharing the video, just actually watching it actually means the most. That's really what the YouTube algorithm cares about. So thank you for just making it this far. And yeah, I guess we'll see you in the next video.